in order to fully describe to you how I feel about the fail or the L that Ed took this week, I'd have to bring up a scenario that I brought up before on the recap. And it's by far the most bizarre occurrence ever to go down in this league until this Ed situation. I'll start at the beginning. In 2011, you guys may remember that Orlando was the champion. For those of you who don't know, he was. He defeated Joe that year. Joe originally drafted Peyton Manning as his quarterback that season. That, of course, was the season where Peyton Manning had a neck injury. He played for the Colts. They had some contract situation. He didn't play that year, and then he came back with the Broncos. Joe's very first quarterback, the very first week, was Kyle Orton. He started Kyle Orton. Guess he didn't get much out of him. He decided to then pick up Matthew Stafford. So from week 2 and on, with exception to the bye week, Joe started Matthew Stafford every single game. And would you like to know how Joe seeded at the end of that regular season? He was the number 1 seed. That bye week, Joe chose to go with Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow scored somewhere around the mid-20s. I guess Joe was pleased. Now to get to that fantasy championship game, when it was the Brother Bowl, it was Joe versus O. And for whatever reason that I'll never understand, and that Joe's pretty much just described to me with a laugh, Joe decided to start Tim Tebow. Matthew Stafford was one of the highest ranking quarterbacks that season. He didn't fail him. He was a number 1 seed. It wasn't broke. There was no need to fix anything. If Joe would have started Matthew Stafford for that game, he would have given him enough points to beat Orlando. That was a bizarre occurrence. But that was an example of poor judgment. That's all that was. We make poor judgments every week in fantasy, some bigger than others. This is by far the most extreme case of bad judgment. Gee, I'm going to take this unorthodox quarterback who commentators and analysts are pretty much saying that this is pretty much a fluke. It's not going to last. He doesn't have the right mechanics. He's not fit to be a quarterback in this league. I'm going to trust that guy over the guy who's gotten me to this point with this record. Bad judgment, Cole. What happened this week was, you can't even describe it. It was so bad. There are a few things that make this a lot worse than what it may seem. First of all, the news of AJ Green's injury was reported on Saturday. This wasn't one of those things where it's like, okay, it's an hour before kickoff or it's a half an hour before kickoff and maybe you just so happen to find yourself in a train station and you can't get a good Wi-Fi signal and you didn't make the move. I guess that would be different. I guess that would lower the scale. You know, this shit's all about degree anyway. That would lower the degree of the fail. But no, the fail is opened up like the fucking Grand Canyon because the news was put out on Saturday. And not only that, it was the fact that mathematically, had Ed went with 3 options to choose from in his bench, he would have gotten the victory. Ed lost 78-65. Had he started Jarvis Landry, who was the last sub that he put in for AJ Green in week 13. Obviously, week 14 was Ed's bye. It didn't matter. I didn't even fucking look. Jarvis Landry was his starter week 13. Had he started Jarvis Landry this week, he would have won 78-81. Had he started Ryan Matthews, he would have won 85-78. had he started Derrick Henry, he would have won 82-78. 3 options. You see, like I said, Joe, bad judgment, and there was one option. There was one quarterback. It just pounds on you even worse when you know that every single option that you could have possibly had to sub for AJ Green would have gotten you the victory. Now, what happened to Ed is actually a common theme this season. Well, not this season, I'm sorry. It's a theme in all these seasons because the number 1 seed has only made the finals 3 times. In 2010, Orlando did it. Obviously, in 2011, Joe did it. And just last year, I did. The number 1 seed has never won a championship. So if we go on history side, I guess Ed wasn't going to win anyway. But as I said this in the chat, and this was the feeling that I had about Dro's season, except Dro's season was sort of expanded, you know? He was able to extend the fail. And it was just one bad thing after another, after another, after another. And it's just a bad season. It's just a bad season. A season that started off good and just went off the rails. But this was just one decision. One decision that pretty much it's never happened before because no one has ever failed to update their team during a playoff week, much less somebody who just won the championship last year and has the opportunity to do it again and would have done it if he would have made the proper sub. It's just there's no words. This is what I'm just gonna end it with. We're just saying. All right, Ed's done. Now let's get to the serious business. In order to get this started, Daddy's gonna need some war music. Okay. Just to make this perfectly clear. I don't like either one of you. Okay. Andy, Paul, I don't like either one of you. Okay? If it were up to me, there'd be no games this week. And we could just ignore this season and move on into the next. That's how I feel. But a winner has to be chosen. A winner has to emerge from the ashes of all these dead teams. All these teams that didn't make the playoffs. Teams that thought they were going to make the championship, but just didn't make the proper adjustments. Teams that never make the playoffs. Out of those ashes, there has to be a winner that has to reign triumphant over the rest of the couch commandos. So here goes. Lifetime between Andy and Paul. They've got 8 games. Paul's been in this league since 2012. So it's 6 regular season games and 2 playoff games. In 2012, they tied at 102. This, of course, is Andy's MO. He loves tying with men. In 2013, they split the season series, but Andy eliminated Paul 93-76 in the very first round. 2014, Andy wins both of the games, including a round 2 meeting with Paul in which he wins 101-69. In 2015, they only played each other once, and Andy won that meeting. And this year, in 2016, they have split those games apiece. So that makes them, at lifetime, Andy with a record of 5-2-1, and Paul with a record of 2-5-1. The very last time that Andy made the championship was in 2014 when he fell short to Jay 78-80. But I suppose what we have to do here is we have to pick a winner. I guess I have to pick a winner. If I do all this talking and I don't select the winner, then what is all this for, really? What I'm going to tell you is I think it's more of a situation of Paul's team just not having enough rather than Andy's team just being that good. Now, I think it would be a very big mistake for Paul to start Ben Roethlisberger. And I know I'm the guy that says your number one quarterback is your number one quarterback. I'm not sure when Paul picked him up. I'm guessing he didn't draft Roethlisberger. I guess Paul corrects me if I'm wrong on that. But Paul has an interesting option. Paul has the option of starting Dak Prescott on Monday against the Detroit Lions, who are the 26th ranked defense, as opposed to playing Ben Roethlisberger at 4:30 on Sunday, who's going up against the Ravens, who are the 9th ranked defense against passers. I think that Big Ben really hasn't been helping Paul much. I mean, round 1, he got him a 2, and just this week, he was just able to come up with 15 points. And now this week, he's got a tough matchup. The weeks before that, I guess, playing against Buffalo in week 14, that's round 1. Buffalo's a pretty good defense, and I'm not sure what the Cincinnati defense is like, but I'm imagining, it's an AFC game, and AFC teams play each other they play each other very fucking tight. I'm also going to point out the fact that Lamar Miller is questionable for Paul. And Lamar Miller is, LeGarrette Blount is the 7th ranked running back, but Lamar Miller has that ability to get over 100 yards and, maybe 2 scores. So if he loses that, then maybe he might be forced to dunk into the Todd Gurley pool, which may not be a bad thing this week for Paul necessarily, because Todd Gurley is projected at 15 points, and he's currently going up against the San Francisco 49ers, who are the 32nd ranked team against the run. See, again, judgment calls. I mean, if he just so happens to, maybe put in Gurley because he wants to trust Gurley this one time against this matchup, I mean, shit. I mean, look how many total fantasy points the 49ers have given up over the past 3 weeks. I mean, against the Chicago running attack, 29 points. That's Jordan Howard. We'll get to him in a second for Andy. Week 14 against the Jets, 29 points again, and 40 points this week against Atlanta. And that, of course, was Devontae Freeman, who's Andy's running back. So, judgment calls. Is Paul going to move these things around? Who knows? But there's a lot of question marks on Paul's side. But I'm also going to say that I feel like Andy's team is also in better shape. So it's more about Paul being in bad shape more than it is about Andy's team being great, though Andy's team isn't looking that bad either. I mean, obviously, Devontae Freeman has a big week just this last week with 30 points scored, and he's got Jordan Howard. Now, Jordan Howard is going up against the Washington Redskins, and boy, is that a tasty matchup if you're Andy. I mean, because just think about it. That's his second option. If your second option comes off a good week, is among the top 10, which, oh, by the way, Freeman's ranked 8th, and Jordan is ranked 9th. He's already in the top 10. It's not like he's your second option and he's the 18th or 20 ranked and your first option is number 5. They're right next to each other in the standings. Not in the standings, in the rankings. So if that's your second option and your number 1 option has a tougher matchup against the Panthers, who are the 7th ranked defense against the run in Devontae Freeman, you definitely like your chances there because there's more of a there's more of an opportunity there to explode for Andy because obviously it's the Atlanta offense. If Matt Ryan opens that shit the fuck up, then it's gonna work like clockwork. And as far as I can tell, that secondary for Carolina, though it looked pretty good just this Monday, is normally kind of weak. It's not the same defense that it was last year. So what I'm going to also look at is the item that I looked at last week, and that's the preview. This is the feature, of course, that I told you guys that gives you a check if your team has bested the other team in whatever particular position that you're looking up. So we have Andy winning the preview at 6 checks to 4. He gets the check for Matt Ryan over Ben Roethlisberger. Of course, Lamar Miller gets the check over Devontae Freeman. That's if he plays, of course. Jordan Howard gets the check over LeGarrette Blount. Then you have Devontae Adams and Mike Evans for Paul getting the check over Rishard Matthews and Odell Beckham for Andy. But I just want to mention this. Odell Beckham Jr. is going up against the Eagles, okay? That's a division game. We're talking about Odell Beckham Jr. If you think he's going to let anybody from the Cowboys secondary, from the Washington secondary, or the Philly secondary to show him up, you're sadly fucking mistaken. I would be scared if I were Paul because the last 2 weeks, Odell's caught 4 passes and 6 passes. Both games under 100 yards, 1 touchdown with about 15 points in week 14 and 12 in week 15. It's got to scare you if you're Paul. It's a division game, and he's due for one of those Odell games, I think. Not to necessarily say that he's going to fucking blow up for 35 points, but it's definitely a possibility. And the Eagles are the 29th ranked team against the pass. The wide receivers. Did I say that already? I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm into the papers right now. I'm sorry. And plus, I'm on an edible, of course. So if we move on here, we've got T.Y. Hilton getting a check over Brandon Cook, then Delaney Walker over Travis Kelce. The Patriots defense, which is playing against the Jets, that's a favorable matchup for Paul, getting the check over the Chargers, but the Chargers for Andy are facing the Cleveland Browns. So I mean, even in an instance where Paul has a real big strength there, and he also has a strength because Mike Evans is going up against New Orleans, so that of course has a potential to be a shootout. And Mike Evans is one of the top fantasy wide receivers, though his last 3 weeks have been complete and utter shit, with scores of 5, 4, and 5. Now the final item is of course the and Andy has the advantage with his kicker from Washington. He does not have a name, he is not a man, and he does not exist. So in terms of that, Andy has the advantage as well. What I'm also going to do right now is something that I've never done on the recaps. I'm going to give you guys a replay because just in case you forgot, of course, I've said a lot of things in this fantasy season. I've made a lot of claims, made a lot of predictions, and been wrong a lot of times. And as long as we can acknowledge that I've been wrong a lot of times, we also do need to acknowledge when I've been right? That's part of your trajectory, right? You guys can get that, right? So we're going to play this replay from the very first installment of this year, which was the fantasy rankings, if you all remember. Okay? Roll it back!
And, Devontae Freeman, Andy's team is dangerous. Now, remember, these rankings aren't based on who is going to win fantasy. I'm just saying, based on what's on paper, these are the teams that I like the most. I like Andy's team. I'll say that Andy's due this year to do something. He's been to a lot of fantasy championships. I predict that Andy this year will make not 1 but 2 trades. I think he will. I think Andy will. Those were your power rankings for this year based on my view of the draft picks. Again, I'll read it off. Andy at number 1, Jay at number 2, Bundy at number 3, Paul at number 4.
That's right. I think I get like 2-3% credit on that. I mean, come on. And plus, I also predicted that he would trade as well. So as I said, it's not to say that he would have won the fantasy championship, but yeah, you know. So I ranked Andy number 1. I ranked Jay number 2, and I ranked myself 3rd, and then Paul was 4th. So I guess it was pretty accurate, just if you eliminated Jay and I. If you take us out of the equation, that's your fantasy championship right there. So it's like the 2 top teams and like the 2 worst teams. Well, then again, there's Joe. But we've got to acknowledge that. We got to fucking, come on. Can somebody give it to me? Somebody give it now? All right, whatever. So this was your Andy and Paul preview. It's what it is. This isn't a recap. This wasn't a look back at anything except for Ed's fail. This was a look ahead as we are looking to crown yet another champion. Both are up for their very first championships. Andy, of course, has been in the championship quite a few times prior to these 2010 stats. I believe maybe Andy's made 2 championships before this one. Before the 2014 one, because I think he got raped by Eric when Eric had won his championship. I just remember Eric raping somebody, and it wasn't me. I think it was Andy. I think it was him. And Andy lost to maybe Hensel when Tito won that championship. You remember that, right? Tito, Hensel, Tito. All right, forget about it. So this was your Andy and Paul preview. As always, may your quarterbacks get hurt before they leave the locker room. May your running backs pull their hamstrings. And may your wide receivers get arrested for marijuana possession. Go fuck yourselves, and good luck to the both of you.